For just $5, she was treated like property, tossed between strangers with no one to care. But when a lone cowboy appeared, everything changed. He saw her worth, wrapped her in his coat, and gave her the respect she'd been denied all her life. In his quiet presence, hope finally felt real. Let's get started. She had no name in their eyes, just a price tag, $5. The small, dusty town sprawled under the relentless sun, its wooden buildings weathered and leaning, windows clouded with dirt. People moved past her with hurried indifference, their boots kicking up plumes of dust as they went about their lives. She stood alone, trembling, feeling the weight of countless eyes that didn't see her as a person, but as an object, a transaction. Every whisper, every glance reinforced her insignificance. She pressed her arms tightly around herself, longing for a single gesture of compassion in a world that seemed determined to ignore her. The wind carried the scent of dry earth and horse dung, mingling with the faint tang of smoke from distant chimneys. She shuffled forward, her bare feet scraping the cracked boards of the street, aching with every step. The town felt endless and oppressive, each building a reminder that she belonged nowhere. Children ran past, their laughter sharp and jarring, as if mocking her helplessness. She averted her eyes, trying to make herself invisible, yet somehow the town's cruelty reached her, pressing into her chest like a physical force. Her stomach growled with hunger, her throat dry, but the loneliness and despair were far heavier burdens. As the sun dipped lower, shadows stretched across the street, long and dark, swallowing corners and alleyways. She stumbled over a loose plank, clutching at a cart for balance, and the rough wood dug into her palms. Her eyes searched desperately for someone who might notice her, someone who might offer even a flicker of care. But each door that opened brought only strangers' indifference. Each voice was either cold or dismissive. She sank to the ground, letting her body curl into itself, and for a moment the world felt endless, uncaring, a place where human lives could be measured and discarded as casually as coins on a counter. Tears threatened to spill down her cheeks as the first hints of evening settled over the town. The buildings cast long, distorted shadows across the street, creating strange shapes that seemed to mock her loneliness. Her mind drifted through the faces that had glanced past her, seeing nothing but a price. She wondered how people could live without empathy, how they could treat another human being like a commodity. Each cough, each barked word, each careless shove into her shoulder was a reminder that she was invisible, undeserving of even a kind glance. And yet, beneath the despair, a fragile spark of hope refused to die entirely. A sudden sound broke the monotony of the town, the distant creak of hooves against the wooden planks. Her head snapped up, and she squinted into the dimming light. Dust rose in small clouds with each step, catching the last rays of sun. At first, she thought it might be another cruel trick, someone who would look at her only to dismiss her or laugh. But the figure moved with a calm, deliberate grace, each stride measured, confident. The silhouette grew clearer against the horizon. A lone cowboy, riding steadily toward her, his presence commanding yet quiet. She froze, unsure whether to hope or to hide. He dismounted with care, his boots crunching softly against the earth, and he stepped toward her. His gaze met hers, and something in that steady, unwavering look made her chest tighten with disbelief. There was no mockery, no judgment, only recognition. He did not see her as a thing to be traded or a problem to be ignored. He saw her as she had longed to be seen, a person, fragile but worthy, human in every sense. He extended a hand slowly, with patience, giving her the space to decide whether to trust him. She hesitated, trembling, yet instinctively she reached for him, letting him help her to her feet. The warmth of his coat enveloped her trembling shoulders, and she felt a strange comfort she hadn't known in months. It wasn't just the fabric shielding her from the cool evening air. It was the gesture itself, deliberate and caring, free from expectation or transaction. He said nothing, but his presence communicated a simple truth. She mattered. For so long people had treated her like a shadow, something expendable. Now beside this stranger who carried no demands, no ownership, she could finally exhale. The world felt different, gentler, as though someone had lifted a weight from her chest and allowed her to breathe freely for the first time. He gestured toward the edge of town, and she followed, hesitant but guided by trust she hadn't thought possible. Each step away from the streets felt lighter than the last, the oppressive heat and harsh looks of the townspeople fading behind them. The cowboy walked beside her, silent but reassuring, moving with a rhythm that seemed designed to put her at ease. She noticed small details she had ignored in her panic: the curve of a distant hill, the soft rustle of leaves in a rare patch of shade, the distant call of a bird returning to its nest. For the first time in days, she felt like she existed in a real world, one that held beauty as well as cruelty. They reached a small clearing, and the cowboy began tending a modest fire. The flames hissed as they caught, casting golden light on his weathered face. She watched silently, mesmerized by the careful, patient movements of someone who seemed wholly unconcerned with herself, but focused on providing warmth and safety. There was a quiet authority in him that did not demand obedience, a strength tempered with empathy. She knelt near the fire, drawn to the heat and its promise of comfort, and finally allowed herself to hope, cautiously, that perhaps this encounter could mark the beginning of something different, something safe and human and kind. He handed her a small cup of water, which she took with a grateful nod. Each sip felt like a revival, the dryness of her throat easing as the warmth of the fire chased away the chill in her bones. She realized with a start that she had not had a moment like this in months, where no one demanded anything of her, where no one saw her as property or a burden. She could simply exist, simply be, and that existence was enough. For the first time, her heart allowed itself to settle, to rest, to believe in the possibility of safety, even if only fleeting. As darkness fell fully, the stars emerged in the clear night sky, twinkling like scattered diamonds over the silent land. She tilted her head upward, mesmerized by the beauty, and felt a connection to something larger, something beyond the cruel eyes and harsh streets of the town. The cowboy's steady presence beside her was a constant, unspoken reassurance. He did not speak of past wrongs or demand explanations. He simply allowed her to exist, respected her space, and acknowledged her humanity. It was a kindness she had nearly forgotten, a rare treasure in a world so often devoid of it. Time passed in quiet companionship, the crackling fire punctuating the stillness. She began to speak softly, telling him fragments of her story, hesitant but compelled by the safety he offered. He listened, never interrupting, never judging, simply acknowledging each word with patient attention. Her voice, quiet at first, grew stronger as the hours passed, and with each sentence she felt herself reclaiming a part of herself, long buried under fear and indifference. It was a revelation to speak without being dismissed, to have someone truly hear her without seeing her as a commodity or an inconvenience. The night stretched onward, filled with a comfortable silence that allowed her to simply breathe. Each moment reinforced a sense of trust, a belief that not all people were cruel. The cowboy's quiet respect became a balm to her frayed nerves, a shield against the indifference she had faced in the town. She curled near the fire, feeling the warmth soak into her, and understood that human connection, genuine and unforced, could exist. She realized with quiet wonder that hope had not been lost entirely, that there were still people capable of seeing and honoring another person's worth. Eventually, sleep claimed her, the fire casting flickering shadows over the clearing as the cowboy remained alert, tending to it with steady care. For the first time, she allowed herself to rest completely, unafraid of being discarded or abused. In her dreams, the memory of the town's cruelty faded, replaced by the warmth, safety, and acknowledgement she had found beside him. It was a fragile, tentative peace, but a peace nonetheless, and it filled her with a courage she hadn't known she possessed. She realized that she could survive, that she could be seen, and that perhaps even in the harshest world, kindness could prevail. When morning arrived, the sun rose over the hills, spilling golden light across the clearing. She woke to the sound of birdsong and the warmth of the fire, and for a moment she hesitated, unsure if yesterday had been real. But the cowboy's steady presence, the tangible respect and care he had shown, assured her that it was no illusion. She stood tentative but determined and felt a sense of resolve take root. For the first time in her life, she knew that being valued, being seen and being treated as human were not privileges. They were her right, and she would carry that knowledge forward, no matter what challenges lay ahead. The cowboy approached slowly, his presence calm and steady, a quiet contrast to the chaos and cruelty she had endured throughout the day. Each step he took seemed deliberate, measured, as if he understood the fragility of her trust. The wind tugged at his coat, but he ignored it, focusing entirely on her. She froze, unsure whether to hope or to hide, yet something in his gaze, a soft, unwavering acknowledgement, made her chest tighten. He didn't speak, didn't smirk or judge. He simply looked at her, really looked, and for the first time in days she felt recognized as a person, not a commodity. Gently, he extended his hand, offering support without expectation, without command. The worn leather of his coat brushed against her trembling shoulders as he wrapped it around her, and she felt warmth seep through her bones. She had longed for comfort and safety, yet had nearly forgotten what it felt like to be treated with care. He said nothing, yet his silence carried meaning. There was no ownership in his touch, no bargain, no question of value, just presence, just respect. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to believe that kindness was possible, that not all people were cruel. She clutched the coat tightly, letting herself lean on him, savoring the rare feeling of being shielded from the harsh world. Her eyes darted to his, searching for any hint of mockery or cruelty, and found none. He met her gaze with patience, unwavering attention, and an understanding that words could not capture. Every motion he made was deliberate yet effortless, conveying calm and security. Her heartbeat, which had been rapid with fear, began to slow. The weight of suspicion and despair she had carried all day loosened, replaced by the fragile beginnings of trust. She realized that respect could exist even in the darkest corners of a cruel world. He guided her toward a small clearing just beyond the town's edge. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the landscape, and the soft glow highlighted her tentative steps. She followed hesitantly, still unsure whether she could fully trust him, yet drawn forward by the safety he exuded. Each step away from the town's streets felt like shedding layers of fear. The wind whispered through the tall grasses, mingling with the scent of dust and distant wildflowers. And for the first time that day, the world felt vast and alive, not just oppressive and cruel. She allowed herself a small breath of relief. As they reached a safe spot, he knelt and began gathering wood for a fire, each motion calm and purposeful. She watched silently, captivated by the ease and confidence in his movements. The fire caught quickly, crackling as the flames licked the dry wood, casting warm light across his rugged features. He gestured for her to sit nearby, and she obeyed, cautiously lowering herself to the ground. The fire's warmth seeped into her chilled body, and for a moment the tension in her shoulders melted. She realized how much she had longed for this, safety, warmth, and simple human acknowledgement. He handed her a small cup of water. She took it with trembling hands, drinking slowly, savoring each swallow as if it were a rare luxury. His eyes never left hers, and she felt seen, truly seen for the first time in ages. The absence of judgment and demand was overwhelming. She had been treated like property, a burden, a shadow to be ignored, but here she could simply exist. She allowed herself to hope, cautiously, that someone could see her worth without expecting anything in return. The realization was dizzying, a revelation she hadn't dared imagine in the town's cruel streets. The evening stretched on, filled with the comforting sounds of the crackling fire and the faint rustle of the wind through the grass. She spoke hesitantly, sharing fragments of her story, bits of fear, loneliness, and abandonment that had weighed heavily on her. He listened without interruption, nodding occasionally, never judging or offering unsolicited advice, just listening, just acknowledging her words. The act itself, simple as it was, felt revolutionary. For so long no one had truly heard her, and now, with this quiet cowboy, her voice mattered. She began to believe that human connection could exist even after betrayal and neglect. Night deepened, and the stars emerged overhead, brilliant against the velvet sky. She tilted her head back, mesmerized by the expanse above, the constellations twinkling like distant promises. The cowboy remained vigilant beside the fire, tending it with gentle care, his presence steadying her like a lighthouse in a storm. She curled slightly toward the warmth, feeling a sense of safety that had seemed impossible earlier. It was more than warmth from fire. It was the comfort of being valued, respected, and treated with dignity. Slowly, her body relaxed, her mind quieted, and for the first time in days, she could rest without fear. Hours passed in that tranquil silence, filled only with occasional murmurs of reassurance and the crackle of the fire. Each moment reinforced the trust she had begun to place in him, the sense that not all people were cruel or indifferent. His respect was a balm to her frayed spirit, an unspoken promise that she was more than a transaction, more than a shadow. She felt her walls of suspicion and despair crumbling, replaced by a tentative but growing hope. She began to imagine a future where she could exist without fear, without being dismissed or devalued, where she could simply be herself. By morning, the first light of dawn painted the horizon with soft shades of pink and gold. She awoke, still near the fire, and felt a sense of continuity and safety that she had not known existed. The cowboy was awake as well, quietly tending the fire, the flickering light highlighting his calm, steady presence. She realized that what had seemed impossible yesterday, trust, respect, care, was now tangible. For the first time, she felt that human decency could survive even in a world that had often seemed harsh and cruel. The morning brought clarity and relief. She rose carefully, testing the strength in her legs, feeling grounded in the reality of the present rather than the fears of the past. He offered a hand once more, and she took it without hesitation, steady and confident. Together, they surveyed the land around them, the vast plains stretching under the rising sun. She felt a quiet sense of possibility, a belief that life could hold more than cruelty. The fire, the cowboy's steady presence, and the peaceful landscape formed a rare sanctuary where she could imagine safety and hope. In this moment, she understood that being seen and respected was a gift she had been denied too long. As the day progressed, she discovered small details she had missed in her flight through the town, the rustle of leaves in a gentle breeze, the distant flight of birds returning to nests, the soft sound of water trickling in a nearby stream. These details, simple yet profound, reminded her that the world held beauty and calm alongside its harshness. The cowboy remained nearby, attentive without intrusion, a constant presence of respect and patience. She realized that being valued did not require grand gestures. It could be expressed in subtle, consistent acts that acknowledged her worth without demanding anything in return. She began to speak again, more confidently this time, sharing her thoughts and feelings without fear of dismissal. He listened with unwavering attention, nodding occasionally, his expressions calm and measured. The act of being truly heard transformed her, allowing her to reclaim parts of herself she had long suppressed. She realized that kindness and respect could exist even when the world seemed merciless. The trust she had placed in him was not naive, but grounded in his consistent actions. It was a rare gift, one that restored her sense of dignity and gave her hope that the future could be different. The hours passed gently, filled with quiet companionship and the comforting warmth of the fire. She allowed herself to relax fully, the tension of constant vigilance finally leaving her body. The cowboy did not speak unless necessary, allowing silence to carry meaning, demonstrating that respect was sometimes shown in the absence of words. She curled closer to the warmth, feeling the protection he offered without pressure or expectation. For the first time in her life, she understood that she did not need to earn basic decency. It was a right she had always possessed, now validated by someone who truly saw her as human. When the sun climbed higher, the fire crackled and flared before slowly fading, leaving behind warm embers. She sat beside it, reflecting on the extraordinary night. She had been treated with dignity, acknowledged as a person, and allowed to exist without fear or judgment. The cowboy's patience and presence had offered her a sanctuary she had thought impossible. For the first time, she believed in human goodness, in the rare but real possibility that respect and kindness could prevail even in a world that often seemed indifferent. The understanding settled in her heart like a quiet, enduring flame. By midday, she felt renewed, not only in body but in spirit. She had endured cruelty and neglect, yet now, under the quiet guidance of this cowboy, she recognized her own worth. The world was not entirely merciless. Trust and respect could exist. Compassion could be genuine. She had been given a rare gift, a demonstration of humanity in its purest form, and she resolved to carry that understanding forward, letting it shape how she saw herself and others. In that moment, she knew that even the smallest acts of respect and kindness could transform a life.